Hey everyone, it's Jillian here. Welcome back to another episode of The Winning Insights, a bonus series of the Ride podcast. This episode features horse and rider on-demand expert Bud Lyon, and he's going to talk about how the ranch riding class is judged. So he's going to go over things like what the judges expect to see from the horse and rider when competing, to the different kinds of penalties that there are in the class, and how specific maneuvers are judged, and just so much more. So let's get into the episode. Here's Bud.
Can I explain how the ranch riding is judged? The ranch riding is judged, should be judged, in my opinion. This is my opinion. I don't represent AQHA in this particular conversation, but in my opinion, the ranch riding should be judged based on the horse that you think you would want to ride all day long. And that is the simplest way that I can define it to you. Of course, it is a pattern class, and to me, it's a performance event, but ultimately, the horse should execute the transitions. It should perform the maneuvers described in that pattern. It should do it in the places where the pattern describes that you should do those transitions and maneuvers. And, as long as it does so and still fits many of the descriptors that I just read to you in that rule book, then to me that is a horse that should be rewarded appropriately. And, if you have two horses that perform the pattern, equally well and admirably so, then, a lot of times personal preference, like any judged event, comes into play, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. As far as the scoring is concerned, it is a scale very similar to the reining. So you're going to start with a 70, a mark of 70. You have a scale that extends upward, plus half, plus 1, plus 1.5 for credit, and then your deductions are your minuses, minus half, minus 1, minus 1.5. Now, the penalties are different in ranch riding, and that's also something that, we should probably take a moment to discuss. If any of you have questions about the penalties, we can talk about that. But in general, as compared to the reining, I find that the penalties are much more severe in the ranch riding, and they are less forgiving to some degree. So, as an example, I had this conversation not long ago, but many of you who have a reining background know that if you run down and stop in your pattern in the show pen and you roll back to the right and your horse comes out on the left lead, you have what? The length of the arena to fix that, right? Before you get to the corner, before it's a penalty, right? It can still be a maneuver deduction depending on your judge in theory, but it is not an actual penalty unless you go around the corner of that arena before fixing it. The ranch riding is different. If you roll back to the right in a ranch riding pattern and you come out on the wrong lead, even for one stride, that's a 3-point penalty per judge. So, there is an argument to be had for show strategy when it comes to the ranch riding, as there is with reining in any pattern class for sure. But that is one example of a penalty that is much less forgiving compared to what we normally see if you do the reining event. Other penalties would be break of gates, which are fairly common, to see in the ranch riding. A break of gate penalty is determined by which gate you're in when you break, and by the number of strides that it takes before you can fix it and get back into the appropriate gate. So, for example, we have a 1-point break a gate penalty at the walk and the trot. If it's and at the lope, I should say, if it's more than 2 strides before you fix that break of gate, then it becomes a 3-point penalty when you're talking about the lope to trot or lope to walk or something like that. So, if I'm trotting along and I break gate for 1 or 2 strides from the trot to the walk, that's going to be a 1-point penalty. If I'm loping and I break gait from the lope to the jog, or vice versa, if I'm long trotting and break gait into the lope and it's more than 2 strides, that's going to be a 3-point penalty per judge. And, that's a backbreaker in a ranch riding class. Many times you can survive a 1-point penalty if you're, credit earning in the rest of the pattern. It's very, very challenging to survive a 3-point penalty per judge in any event, much less, the ranch riding. It's just too competitive these days to be able to do that. So that's something that we'll probably talk about later on today in regards to, or tomorrow perhaps, when we do some pattern work and we talk about show pen strategy. But, a lot of that becomes, boils down to risk reward and how well you know your horse and how confident you are that you can pull off a gait or a transition or a maneuver with a high degree of difficulty without incurring a penalty. Because we all know that, you can't win anything in any judged event by giving them points back.
Thank you guys for tuning in to the Ride Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and please be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow Horse and Rider Magazine on social media and find us at horseandrider.com.
If you guys have any questions or comments, please be sure to hit us up at horseandrider@equinenetwork.com. We want to hear from you guys.
And if you like what you're listening to, be sure to leave us a review on iTunes.